Hey everybody, welcome back. It's another episode of the Spartan Shadows podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Chris. I'm joined with my co-hosts, Zach and Emmett. Today we're back with another episode, a weekly recap, summer grind news. Per usual, we got a few updates. From football mostly, we got some good recruiting news this past week, but also some nice news for hockey. Basketball had a little bit of a cool info story information. Just kind of sum everything up. Should be a pretty quick episode today. And then next week, we're hoping to come back with maybe a potential guest and do a mailbag. So we got some stuff coming up in store as official visit season is starting to wind down. So we appreciate everybody tuning in as always. Zach, Emmett, thanks so much for joining me. How are you guys doing today?
Good. Excited. Jonathan Smith seems like he's finally cooking a little bit on the football side of things. So obviously that's always a good thing. But yeah, how are you doing, Emmett?
Pretty good. Like I put out in my tweet earlier today, someone let Jonathan Smith get hot.
Yeah, get hot he has. We'll kick off that with the recruiting news of the week. MSU lands multiple of commits in the past week or so since we've been in touch with you. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 commitments. I'll run through them real quick. Pretty awesome list. Like I said, Jonathan Smith is cooking with fire now. But first we'll start here. KJ Dorizo, the corner out of Fayetteville, Georgia. He committed. And then we had Elijah Caldwell Hardy, safety from Jacksonville, Florida. He committed. Then we had the D lineman Christopher Knowles. He's from Frisco, Texas. He was the next commitment. Then we had Corey House, an edge rusher out of Memphis, Tennessee. The big commitment of the week that really got the Twitter sphere going. Offensive tackle, offensive lineman Colin Campbell from Gilbert, Arizona. He is a 4-star in pretty much every recruiting service other than 24/7, but he'll get the bump here. The composite has him as a 4-star, so he
I'm
currently
sure he'll
sits
bump
as our
down for
highest.
MSU. But
Yeah, he
anyway,
might get the bump down for the MSU commit, but overall he's a 4-star. He's currently our highest rated recruit. So Colin committed just a few days ago, and then this morning, we're recording this on Friday, we got word of the commitment from another offensive lineman in Quinn Bucky. So big week there on the recruiting front. I guess we'll start there, guys. Thoughts on the recruits and what we picked up?
I have two thoughts real quick. One, we're finally addressing the front offense and defense. So I absolutely love that. We've all talked about for probably the past year of how important the offensive and defensive line is. And obviously, like the two biggest gets are probably offensive line for the most part. At least the biggest get is offensive line. So you absolutely love to see that, especially from an offensive line that hasn't been very great to say the least in the last like 8 years, 8, 10 years probably at this point, kind of headed back to like the later D'Antonio days. So obviously love doing that. And then the second thing I really want to talk about is we should just take everyone to McDonald's in East Lansing at this point because it's a win-win situation. We got one of our best commits because he went to McDonald's. So it really seems like we need to just send everyone to this McDonald's, and it's just a selling point at this point. So maybe if you're listening to this Nightingale, maybe take Gavin McKenna to that McDonald's and make it 2 for 2.
I'd be
yeah.
down for that.
So my first thoughts are, like Zach said, the two offensive linemen, Bucky and Campbell, are the biggest names that you're going to see right now from that group of 5, 6 players who committed. Bucky, while being the lower rated NFL bloodline, has two older brothers that both play in former Pac-12 schools, one of which is UCLA, now a conference opponent. His dad, 7th-round pick for the Dolphins in the 90s. So you have that NFL bloodline, and some sites are saying between him and his brothers, he is the most talented of them all, which has to make you excited when the other ones are on active Power 4 rosters. That always has to help. And then some of the lower rated when compared to the 4-star of Campbell or the high 3-star of Bucky, all of them honestly will slot in well with, you saw 3 defensive back commitments. And I believe 2 defensive back commitments, my fault. And of them, you are losing a ton of players just from, we have quite a few one and dones in terms of, the first name that stands out to me is Texas Tech safety Devin Cromwell. You have Dontavius Nash from East Carolina, both of whom are only here for 1 year. So you have players that are going to be able to slot into those scholarships, but not have the immediate pressure for playing time and be able to develop, which is what you need. Christopher Knowles is a interesting case because he's kind of that tweener size, 6'4", 260. Had quite a few offers, had a visit to Oklahoma State, so that always a little bit reassuring. But at the end of the day, he could go to either spot, hopefully defensive tackle, because that is the spot that needs the most attention. The Spartans have a ton of upperclassmen defensive linemen. You need to start replenishing that room. Right now, your only guy in the wings who is an underclassman is Mike Schoenbieler, and he was a late addition in that class, a late addition in the 2024 class as a 3-star. You have Derek Simmons, who's also a high 4-star, who was also a 4-star, probably going to be a threat, might not even redshirt this year. That's very exciting. But you know that Michigan State runs 3, 4, 5 deep at defensive tackle. That's been their key to success, dating back to the late D'Antonio, well, early D'Antonio, obviously, and then the later D'Antonio years. They always seem to have a great defensive line, and now the question just becomes, how are the Spartans going to replenish that depth? Because that is what the Spartans need to continue to have their traditional Spartan-dominating run defense. I know the pass rush wasn't there last year, but the run defense was top 5 for run disruptions in the country, if I'm not mistaken. So if you want to continue that, a Knowles is a good start, but you need to see more players, especially a defensive tackle, coming in. I feel bad I haven't even mentioned, really, Colin Campbell outside of just references to his name. He is a player all of us were hyped, and I would say, based on the fact that he had visited in week 1 of the cycle, and we hadn't heard a ton since, we all kind of had assumed, oh, he's going to go to Utah, gonna find a school closer to home to commit to. It was kind of a shock to see everything develop to the point where, oh, we're actually landing this kid. And he's a player I'm fired up for. Not sure if he's gonna be that immediate impact player. Rare to see that from any offensive lineman in the Power 4 level. That said, could we see him playing redshirt freshman, redshirt sophomore year? Definitely. And that's something I'm fired up to see, because if you lived under a rock, the offensive line and the trench war for MSU last year was sometimes hard to watch. And I think Campbell, Eli Bickle, who's already been committed, and Quinn Bucky are 3 great corner pieces to go along with the 2024 and 2025 classes. I like what Smith is doing right now in the trenches, and I'm excited to see the future of MSU, but to do that, we have to get through the 2025 first and see the results of what we have in the portal and the 6 offensive linemen coming off red shirts. So overall, it's a very exciting time, but recruiting so far, I would say without the last 2 days, you might have put your thumbs about right here. Now, I'm giving it 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, and more to come, hopefully soon. We have some people on campus this weekend, which we'll touch on in a minute. But Colin Campbell, obviously, for me, is the big piece of this class. To Zach's allusion, the McDonald's story was kind of funny. That kind of messed with Twitter a little bit yesterday. But he had a good quote about how feeling that East Lansing's such a college town, and it was cool for him to go through the town and see just how much the city cares about MSU and runs about MSU. And then he cited going through and seeing a McDonald's painted green and white, and seeing that. And so the 2-story McDonald's lives in lore yet again. So good to hear that was something that was highlighted on the visits, because especially going after these West Coast players and these out-of-state players that maybe have never heard of East Lansing or been through East Lansing before, that's a big selling point. I mean, the campus, we've talked about millions of times how pretty it is and how nice of a campus it is, but when you go through East Lansing as a city and see, what it has to offer and how the college basically is the city itself and how intertwined it is, that's a selling point to a lot of recruits. And I know Campbell had mentioned it flat out, and other recruits that have committed and been on visits, that's been a big talking point. So glad to see the staff is really showcasing that. So that brings our current class. For those keeping track at home, we're at 12 commits currently, which, if you remember,
Lansing with preferred walk-on as well. Want to note that.
Yeah, with Jack Lansing as a preferred walk-ons.
13 technically.
If those are keeping track at home and listening to our episodes, Emmett and I had talked before, hoping, maybe at the end of the official visit season, we were hoping to be right around that 12 to 14 mark potentially, when all the visits were said and done. So to hit 12 already with 2 weeks left of official visit season is nice to see. And kudos to the staff for getting that done. Kudos to the current commits that have been committed for a while, i.e. like the Joey Bickle or the Joey Caudell, Eli Bickle. They came back to campus last week on their official visits, even though they were already committed and helped recruit. I know Cade Kaufman's coming in next week. Eddie
Whiting was
Whiting's
week
been a
one, I
big.
want to say.
Yep, I was going to say Eddie Whiting's been a big recruiter as well from this class. So I'm getting those kids to also help pitch people coming in. It's great to see. So overall, the staff and the players are doing a great job of selling the program. Just telling you what we hear. We're not going to say names or anything, but I know that a potential few more recruits are coming within the next few days. So hopefully more good news on the horizon. But just to give you a rundown, like I said, 12 currently. Jack Lansing is a preferred walk-on. He would make 13. But I'll give you the 12 scholarship players. I'm just going to name them. We don't need to break them down. But Colin Campbell, offensive tackle. Cade Kaufman, quarterback. Braylon Hodge, linebacker. Corey House, edge. Eddie Whiting, tight end. KJ Dorizo, corner. Quinn Bucky, offensive tackle. Braden Thomas, safety. Eli Bickle, offensive tackle. Joey Caudell, tight end. Elijah Caldwell Hardy, safety. And Christopher Knowles, defensive lineman. So all around, kind of hitting every position. Good variety, good breakdown variety, and kind of being all over the country too. We have 2 commits from Michigan and Ohio, so we got the Midwest ties, but then you see commits from California, Colorado, Arizona, Florida, Georgia, Texas. So kind of hitting all of the hotbeds traditionally, and then also sticking to Jonathan Smith's roots in the West Coast, plus the Midwest. So it's nice to see spreading it all around. So congratulations to those who committed this week on finding your college home. We're excited to have you here. Excited for the staff. And hopefully a few more of the people we're about to name here shortly join you. I'll transition to the people that are on campus this weekend. Well, we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, technically 6, 7 visitors, but 2 of them are current commits, being Joey Caudell and Eli Bickle. So 5 new faces. Of the 5, some pretty popular names. One I'll highlight off the bat is linebacker Adam Shaw. Legacy recruit, hit both of his parents played sports at MSU back in the 90s. Adam's dad played football and his mom played, I believe, field hockey. And his recruitment's kind of caused a little bit of stir on social media because at the first part of the month, he had taken his official visit to Rutgers and then committed on the spot. And that kind of sent Twitter ablaze and the fans ablaze and saying, now we're losing legacy recruits before they even come to campus. What are we doing? And kind of using it as a negative point on the staff. Obviously, that was before the month of June had really kicked off and the recruiting had heated up a little bit. This week, Adam Shaw announced he was decommitting to Rutgers, felt like he committed too early, wanted to come to MSU and see what was what. He's on campus now. Things are going well for his visit from what I've heard, so hopefully we can seal the deal this weekend and get him to commit. But he's a really good linebacker. He's ranked as I believe an 88 overall on 24/7. He'll be a high ranking recruit. Just to name the rest of the guys on there, we have 3-star wide receiver Samson Gash from Detroit. He plays at Detroit Catholic Central. He's an 89 overall. Rusher Chris Addison, also an 89 overall from Winsboro, Louisiana. 3-star offensive lineman Khalif Canty from Cass Tech here in Detroit. He is rated an 88 overall. And then 3-star wide receiver Rashawn Elmore from Indian Trails, North Carolina. He's an 86. Kind of a late bloomer there for him. Of course, Joey and Eli also on campus. I don't want to forget them and act like we're not mentioning them, but they have been committed to the class for quite some time now. So we appreciate you guys helping sell some of these recruits while you're on campus this weekend. But guys, any takeaways on the guys this weekend, or any thoughts regarding the new faces on campus?
Yeah, it turns out panicking before June and all these official visits probably wasn't the wisest idea in the world. Maybe a little bit too early. It's also, in my opinion, probably a little too early to celebrate kind of just for how everything else kind of goes. But just the overall thought, getting Canty would be really nice. I know that I believe he's been kind of rising up the recruiting boards a little bit, so getting him one night would be nice. Gash, his brother's on the team, so that would be kind of a nice little connection there. Overall, it's just really, really nice that we're getting some of these visitors. And then Shaw, I know he's been kind of the one that you really focused on quite a bit But obviously, I love the idea of a legacy recruit. Keep him in state, keep him at Michigan State, and just kind of continue the momentum going forward.
But yeah, like Zach said, obviously the big name on campus for most of us, and like Chris said, is Adam Shaw. Linebacker is a huge need for the class. Having a player decommit from another Big Ten school and visit, obviously a huge deal. Trying to land down a legacy. Samson Gash has family ties to the team, like Zach said. Additionally, both of their brothers, Gideon Gash, might be viewed as the highest rated Gash of the family. He is a class of 2027. I believe he's 6'4" already, and getting offers from Michigan, getting offered. Obviously, MSU is offered, put their hat in the race. So obviously, this has more than just class of 2026 implications. It has future implications for 2027, trying to get someone to pitch their brother to play with them. Obviously, we saw with Quinn Bucky literally today that having a brother doesn't necessarily guarantee that everything with having a brother close to home doesn't guarantee you're going to want to go there. If that was the case, Quinn Bucky would be a UCLA Bruin right now. But that said, obviously, class of 2027 implication, then it's never too early to really start thinking about that. Because if you're not thinking about that, there's 30 other teams that, of those 30 teams, 20 of them will be in the top 25 by the end of this season that'll have 2027 commits and implications already going. And like Zach also said, it's too early to celebrate recruit rankings, too early to be too down on them. We all were down on it, and then, 7 commitments in 7 days? 7 commitments in 8 days? Something like that? Feels like every time I sit down to eat, or every time I take a break at one of my other jobs, it's, oh look, another commitment pops up for Michigan State. So, obviously, it was way too early to panic about rankings. And it's way too early to be like, as it stands right now, Michigan State's 30th and Michigan is like 36th in recruit rankings.
Yeah,
That
don't
isn't
do
going to
that,
mean anything.
people.
Yeah, that's not going to mean anything. It might not even mean anything a week from now, because Michigan might go on their own heater and land 4 4-stars and 4 3-stars. So it's way too early to be investing in recruit rankings, way too early to invest in recruiting class rankings. Because there's a whole season, all of these players that have committed still have a whole season of of high school ball to play right now. They could go off, and Cade Kaufman could shatter every Michigan high school single season record, and could be a 5-star by the end of the class for all we know right now. Probably not, but it is a situation that is possible and plausible. Is it likely? No, but let me have some copium right now and hopium. But obviously right now there is still a lot to be decided in this class, so don't get too high, don't get too low. Kind of let it happen. Let this whole recruiting cycle happen, because you have to have faith in Jonathan Smith. They have an athletic director who's willing to go to bat. Sorry, I had to. Willing to go to bat for them. And obviously we saw it pay off so far. I'm not sure how much you see it where a player will visit will visit a school and then a week and a half later end up committing and canceling the rest of their visits. And I'm not going to say it's about money, but at the same time, if you can add a little bit of sweetener, which maybe with Jay Batt at the helm of the athletic department, adding a little bit of that sweetener and that deal to seal it, that may have happened. I'm not sure, but that's just my own speculation.
Hey, like the song by Thunderstruck, Money Talks.
Yeah.
Sometimes they can talk a little bit.
Absolutely. Yeah, so that's where we sit recruiting rankings. Like I said, still another week worth of visits. I believe next week we have 5 players coming in over the weekend, plus 2 coming midweek. So some more players coming into town. Some of them aren't new faces, because Cade Kaufman and Jack Lansing will be in next weekend to kind of help sell the Spartans to the other new faces. But still, like I said, some potential with some players there, plus other players that have visited already that haven't decided quite yet. Still have a shot in a few of them. I've heard good things actually about a couple players that we've already talked about maybe being persuaded and things like that. So you never know. But as always, we will update as soon as we get the news on commitments. Follow us on social media. Twitter is the most up-to-date place for that. But just keep us in the loop, and you'll see us tweeting about it, our podcast page tweeting about it, and hopefully relaying a lot of good news. And speaking of good news, let's transition over to hockey. It was announced today, Adam Nightingale, coach, earned a new contract extension. Board of Trustees approved, along with J-Bat's contract. They approved a new contract for Adam Nightingale. It's going to be a 5-year rollover deal, similar to what you've seen other MSU coaches in the past have. I know Coach D'Antonio had one. I think Tom Izzo has one where it just kind of rolls over, and if he wants to stay, then extension will kick in at a clause to be the X highest paid or X amount of a raise, whatever it sets into. So we currently have the 5-year rollover deal in place for Nightingale. He got a pretty substantial raise, which is good because it is well deserved. 5 years is a pretty good key in my opinion because that gives you a player's career cycle if they stay all 4 years plus a year. So it really helps with recruiting and selling on players on yes, I'll be here. Buyout is fairly hefty. I believe it's set at $2 million for now, which for a hockey coach is quite high, but that can be refigured if needed, or if MSU really needs to get rid of them for some reason. Pay it. It can be done. That won't be the case. I have a feeling the way this contract was set up, the only way you're going to see Adam Nightingale leaving is if maybe an NHL job he wants comes calling. But I like the way this deal was structured, and the way Adam Nightingale was sounding at his press conference or statement about it was just kind of saying, hey, this is a good thing, and I'm here for the long haul. I like that. I know most MSU fans will like that. And keep this hockey train running. You guys want to mention anything about Adam Nightingale, or we've got one more piece of basketball news before we wrap everything up?
I do want to mention one thing. Adam Nightingale is not allowed to leave MSU outside of one job in the NHL, and that is the Detroit Red Wings. Anything else is not allowed at all. If he goes to the Red Wings, I am absolutely thrilled. I'm absolutely devastated for Michigan State, but in my opinion, I think kind of the way Michigan State is investing in resources, obviously with like the trainer, all this kind of stuff. Like I think you're really starting to see MSU like really like invest in its hockey program, and obviously Adam Nightingale is a huge reason for that. And I probably shouldn't even be talking about this at this point, but Adam Nightingale absolutely well deserving of this extension. Like he's a guy that like if he's around for a really long time, like he's going to be a guy that's going to win a ton of games. He's going to be a guy that's going to bring in great players. And you did mention the 5-year extension about how it's been over the life of a recruit that comes in. Guess what? That also includes players that maybe play 1 year in the NHL that is possibly considering MSU that I think we would all love a little bit. I know there's been some quote unquote rumors that weren't necessarily true, but with Adam Nightingale and this extension, hopefully that will build a little bit of confidence that Adam Nightingale is not leaving anytime soon.
Yep. So Gavin McKenna, if you're listening, he's here to stay.
Yep, and his pizza is too.
Yeah, and he comes with a pizza oven.
Yep.
I heard it's great. I've never had it before.
Also, just two quick thoughts on that. Like Zach was saying about how that rollover deal and everything, and how he's going to win a lot of games and hopefully win national titles, bring those to East Lansing. Doesn't that sound a lot like a basketball coach who we locked into a long-term deal and is the coach that most people compare to Nightingale in terms of how they are? Doesn't it sound a little Tom Izzo-like, first off? And then second off, the big concern that people had when, if there was any real concern when J-Bat was hired, was what's going to happen to the successful non-revenue athletics. I know hockey is more of that borderline now, especially with all the new deals with the Canadian hockey leagues to try to land more talented players into the collegiate ranks. So it's starting to become more of a borderline revenue sport. But at the same time, it's not your football. It's not your men's basketball. But seeing a over 100% raise being thrown into a salary, that tells you that J-Bat is not just coming here to pay for men's basketball and football right now. He is trying to bring in national titles to Michigan State, and it doesn't have to be. Obviously, it would be great if it's the college football playoff. Obviously, it would be great if it's March Madness. But it's not just going to be those national titles that J-Bat wants to bring to East Lansing, and that is a great thing to see in your first 10 minutes as athletic director, it feels like. Honestly,
yeah,
maybe even officially being one.
I was going to say, doesn't he officially start next week? So,
yeah.
But yeah, no, great to see and great for Coach Nighty and the hockey staffs. Big expectations are coming, and we wouldn't have it any other way. quickly moving over to basketball, one piece of good feel news. Nothing major, but Tom Izzo did announce the other day. Was this Wednesday, I believe, or was it Thursday? Sorry, forget the day, but the last couple of days, Tom Izzo's announced that Nick Sanders has earned himself a full ride scholarship for the basketball program. So congratulations to Nick. Super exciting to see all his hard work paying off. Just happy for him. You know, he's a guy that shows up and works hard, and one of those bench guys that is now getting the acknowledgement to be on scholarships. Had an extra scholarship handy, so congrats to Nick, and you've earned it, buddy. Any thoughts on that before we wind it down, guys?
No, like in depth kind of conversation. Honestly, it's just really good. Like he absolutely deserved it. You have another scholarship to give, especially with like the house settlement, all that kind of stuff. So it's just kind of the way sports are moving, but absolutely well deserved. And he's a guy that came off the bench and scored quite a few points, even late in games. So obviously love seeing that, but obviously you know how much time he spends in practice, and he's just a hard worker, and he deserves it at this point.
Yeah, like Zach was saying, he's a hard worker who deserves it. Especially when you look at Tom in those press conferences. One of the main reasons he credited Michigan State with their turnaround year this year was the intensity from the practice squad, and Nick Sanders was among those people who was bringing that intensity day in, day out. Him, Kurt Tang, Garrick Norman, who has since transferred, all of them really brought the intensity to practices and made the 2024-2025 men's basketball team so special. Yes, when people think of Nick Sanders, they're not going to really think of the same moments that you think of with Jace Richardson and his 30-point performance against Oregon. But at the same time, it was great to see, Nick get that. It's great to see Nick get that scholarship, and his last game action of the year was against Bryant, where he got to have a bucket. Obviously, it was late in the competition, and by that point, it had kind of turned into a rout, and people were starting to flip off their TVs or look for a closer game in March Madness. As someone who was at that arena, it was a very special moment, and a lot of fans stayed there and were very happy to see Nick score, and it's great for Nick to get that recognition. Obviously, do we think that this is going to make it so that he becomes even a rotational player with MSU this year? Probably not. Granted, if somehow he got blessed with the basketball god's power and is suddenly a 20-point per game player, I'm never complaining about that. That said, being realistic, do we think it affects playing time a ton this year? Not really. You saw very similar with Davis Smith a couple years back when he was put on scholarship. It's just a reward for the hard work and intensity you bring to practice. And could you see Tom Izzo trust him if you have guards in foul trouble and you need to dribble out 15 seconds to end the first half? Of course. But that might be the most recognition you get. And that's what Nick Sanders has thrived in, is doing that hard work that doesn't get the recognition. So finally, he gets a moment of recognition. So huge congrats to Nick. Very great, humble kid, and it's awesome for him to have this moment.
Absolutely. Well, that will do it for us. We appreciate everybody tuning in once again. Another fun week. Sorry for the slow news, but not really a slow news week. Football recruiting is giving us plenty to talk about, but official visit season winds up. We'll get into Spartan Dog Cons next month, and then summer camp opens up, and football season right around the corner. We're looking at just over 2 months away, so slowly getting for football season, and exciting, of course. So obviously tune in next week. Like I said, we're hoping to have a guest. We did get some fan questions when we posted yesterday for potential questions on a mailbag. We're not going to address them this episode. We'll save them for next week with our guest, hopefully. So if you guys have any other fan questions, shoot us a message, a DM, a comment on Twitter, email, whatever. Let us know what you got, and we will try to answer it on air next week with us, and like I said, maybe a potential guest. So that will do it for us then. So we appreciate everybody. Have a good rest of your night, and like always, go green.
Go